saw the images. During the 2025 monsoon, the Himalayas were just hammered by one extreme rainfall event after another. It was relentless. We saw these devastating flash floods, these catastrophic landslides, and it all raises a really troubling question. So that's the big question, right? Why is this happening? In this explainer, we're going to peel back the layers on this. We're going to follow the evidence and try to understand the complex and, frankly, pretty alarming forces behind these recent tragedies.
Okay, so with any investigation, you've got to start with the usual suspect. And for us, that's the Southwest Monsoon itself. Was there something different about it this year? Let's take a look.
Well, our first clue is that the monsoon showed up early in 2025. It hit Kerala on May 24th, a full 8 days ahead of schedule. But, and this is a big but, if you look back at the timeline, its arrival is always kind of all over the place. Sometimes it's early, sometimes it's late, so an early start on its own isn't really a smoking gun. You know, it's not like someone just looks outside and says, yep, monsoon's here. Declaring the monsoon is actually a super precise scientific process. The Indian Meteorological Department has this 3-part checklist. You need enough rain at specific weather stations for 2 days straight, the winds have to be just right, and even the cloud cover has to hit a certain mark. It's serious business. And here's the kicker. Even though the early arrival got all the headlines, study after study shows there's no real connection between when the monsoon starts and how much rain you get over the whole season. So what does that tell us? It tells us our prime suspect didn't act alone. There had to be an accomplice. So if the monsoon wasn't the lone gunman, who was its accomplice? Well, this is where our investigation takes a really sharp turn and uncovers a culprit that honestly shouldn't even be at the scene of the crime. 15. Just look at that number. This single number is the key piece of evidence that changes everything. 15. That's how many Western disturbances were recorded during the 2025 monsoon season. Now, to really get how wild that is, in a typical monsoon season, you might see, 1, maybe 2 of these things, if any at all. But in 2025, we saw 5 in June, 5 in July, and another 5 in August. That's not just a little unusual, it's a massive off-the-charts deviation from the norm. So what the heck are these things anyway? Well, think of them as winter storms. They're born all the way over in the Mediterranean, and they usually drift over to bring rain and snow to northwest India during the cold months. They have absolutely no business being this active in the middle of a summer monsoon. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Experts like Kieran Hunt, meteorologist over at the University of Reading, have confirmed just how nuts this is. He's basically saying, yeah, this is far, far beyond what's normal. We're not just looking at a weird weather event, we're looking at a whole new pattern. All right, so we've got our 2 perps at the scene, the monsoon and this gang of out-of-season winter storms. But who's pulling the strings? What's bringing them together? Well, to find that answer, we've got to zoom way out and unmask the global mastermind behind this whole deadly collusion, climate change. The first piece of the puzzle is way, way up in the atmosphere, with something called the jet stream. According to Kieran Hunt again, you can think of the jet stream as a kind of super highway for these Western disturbances. And historically, that highway shifts north, away from India, way before the monsoon even gets going. But here's the problem. Climate change is messing with that schedule. It's delaying that shift, so the storm highway is staying open for business right over India, which allows these winter storms to just barrel into the subcontinent at the exact same time the summer monsoon is in full swing. Now, for part 2 of this master plan, Raghu Murtagud from IIT Bombay explains that it's also about regional warming. All that extra heat over West Asia is basically acting like a giant magnet, pulling the monsoon's moisture-packed winds further and further north. It's literally pumping a fire hose of moisture right into the path of those incoming Western disturbances. And this is where it all comes together in the worst possible way. You have the incredible moisture from the monsoon crashing head-on into the energy and instability of a Western disturbance. It is the perfect recipe for absolute disaster, for catastrophic cloudbursts and flash floods. We've seen this exact deadly interaction before, during the tragic Uttarakhand floods back in 2013. So let's be really clear here. The verdict is in. This isn't just about one bad season. This isn't a freak event. The data is telling us that a fundamental and pretty dangerous shift is happening to India's weather.
Just look at this data from a CEEW study. It paints a really stark picture. They mapped rainfall trends over 40 years. That first bar shows that over half, 55% of India's districts are seeing more monsoon rain overall. But look at that middle bar, that's the really critical one. Nearly two-thirds of all districts are seeing more days of intense, heavy, dangerous rainfall. The big takeaway here is that we have to stop thinking of these disasters as shocking surprises. Scientists are being very clear about this. This kind of extreme weather, this is the new normal. And that means we have to completely change how we prepare for the monsoon every single year. Okay, so that's the problem. It's big, it's scary, but that brings us to the most important question of all. What are we going to do about it? In this new, more volatile reality, we need a whole new game plan for the future. The good news is, we're not flying blind here. There is a roadmap to building resilience. It starts with better science, right? Things like ensemble forecasting, where you run tons of simulations to see a whole range of possibilities, not just one. It also means getting that science down to the ground level, with super local forecasts for specific towns, changing when and what farmers plant, and baking this climate data right into how we plan our cities. The goal isn't just about having more data. It's about turning that data into real action that saves lives. And really, that's what this all boils down to. The monsoon has changed. The old rules just don't apply anymore. The question that we are all facing now is, how do we adapt? How do we change our systems, our cities, and our own thinking to not just react to the next disaster, but to actually see it coming and get ahead of it?